But he had come to a point in his walk with God that he was able to hang out with the people who once enticed him.
Yeah.
But he influenced them and brought light to them and was a light in those dark places. Instead of being in the darkness, he was a light.
The Bible makes it very clear that if you surround yourself with fools, if you surround yourself with people who are of the world, who are delving into all those things, sinful habits, behaviors, whatever it is, you're going to take after them. They're going to rub off on you. Mm-hmm. But the Bible also says if you surround yourself with wise people, you're going to become wise. Mm-hmm. You become who you surround yourself with. And I think it's very important to be careful who you're letting into your life and who you're letting influence you.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of that old saying, I'm sure we've all heard it, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
And that was something I really had to learn. I used to go to church twice a week. I even served, but my behavior was so bad in church. I was making inappropriate jokes in youth group and just really being insensitive to people. And at one point, I had some leaders call me out for it, and they said, Jace, who are you hanging out with?
Yeah.
And everybody I listed off were just, they were some troubled people who were really influencing me.
Yeah.
And I had to really reevaluate who I surrounded myself with. And I didn't cut anybody off, honestly. What I did is I just brought more people into my inner circle.
Yeah.
And maybe put some people out into, my more outer social circle, just to influence me in a positive way. I saw people, they have traits I desire to be like, and so I'm going to bring them in and try to have them rub off on me.
Yeah. Well, I think especially in an early Christian life or maturity, it's very important to surround yourself with people who are strong in the faith so you get built up and build your maturity so that when you, because it's inevitable, we obviously are surrounding ourselves with people of the world, and especially if we're trying to go out to reach them, that we're going to be around them. Yeah. So we need to grow our maturity to be able to maintain our faith, maintain our character, and just carry ourselves before God, knowing that there are these things in the world, knowing what entices us, and knowing how to combat that or stay away from it. And Proverbs 1:10 says, "My child, if sinners entice you, turn your back on them." So I don't think that at all is saying to turn your back on people of the world. I think God is trying to say that if there are people who are going to drag you into sin, you are tempted to give into it. Say if some of your friends go out partying and drinking every weekend, and you have a history with alcohol, and it's going to entice you to be drugged into that, then you need to reevaluate and step away from that situation for a while until you can build your maturity up and then be a light to them.
Yeah. I want to touch on that too, because it's really important, because sometimes in the church we can kind of just surround ourselves with only other believers. And we become a special club that legitimately, maybe not with our words, but by our actions, kind of has distaste in the rest of the world. Yeah. And we should have distaste in sin and the things of the world, but we shouldn't have distaste in people. Yeah. And that's how a lot of times it seems like it ends up as. So the Bible's clear. Hang out with sinners. But we need to make sure that we're in a place in our walk with God that when we hang out with sinners, that we're influencing them and they're not influencing us. And I think that just takes a lot of humility, being honest with yourself. I'm doing good. I'm not really falling into temptation with whatever this sin may be. Yeah. But you start hanging around some friends who maybe aren't walking with the Lord or aren't as sanctified. Yeah.
Just as mature.
Yeah, as mature in their walk, and you start noticing, I'm making jokes I usually don't make, and that I don't really think are appropriate, or my actions aren't matching up with my morals, or I'm even engaging in some type of sin, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, and Christ calls us to walk as he walked, to become more Christ-like, and to be a light of the world. And so when we surround ourselves with these people, like you said, we should go out into the world, not seeking to go sin, but seeking to show people who Jesus is, show them the love that he has, not only for us, but for them. Even though they're not walking with him, even if they've cussed him out, turned their back on him, never gave him a thought, we should still be showing them how much he loves them and letting our lives be a mirror of who Christ is and the life that he wants to walk out with them as well.
Yeah, when I was in my mission school, we had a teacher who, I don't think this guy, he had everything you could imagine in his testimony. Drug addict, alcoholic. He considered himself a murderer because he forced a girl to get an abortion. He hit a woman. You think of one bad thing, and this guy's probably done it, you know? And how the Lord kind of first started reaching out to him was he would go to clubs, and there would be this guy outside with, a bunch of piercings and tattoos and, crazy hair, and he would sit outside of the clubs with a cooler of water bottles. And he'd say, "Hey, man, I used to be just like you, but Jesus changed my life." And he did that on a regular basis. And the guy outside, handing out waters, his testimony was he was in the clubs. He was doing whatever drugs he could find. He was drinking whatever he could get. But he had come to a point in his walk with God that he was able to hang out with the people who once enticed him. Yeah. But he influenced them and brought light to them and was a light in those dark places. Instead of being in the darkness, he was a light, really just eradicating the darkness there.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, too, based on what you just said, they can get tripped up on how should I share the gospel with someone? How should I tell them about Jesus? How should I be that light? And what you just touched on is the power of testimony, of everyone, whether it's big, small, it's there or not, you have a testimony of how you met God, how he met you, and how he built a relationship with you. And whether it's big, whether it's flashy, it's a tool that you have to show people the love of God and how he wants to walk through life with them. And it doesn't have to be some complicated formula of how do I tell this person, how do I reach this person. Just use your testimony, use the people in your life. Everyone has a sphere of influence that God has given them, whether it's just a few people at work, whether it's people at school, whether you are a CEO of a company or a millionaire or a huge social media influencer. Everyone has some type of sphere of influence that you can share your testimony, you can share the love of God, and just share who he is with them.
Yeah, and, a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't really have a testimony, and that's such a funny thing to say in a way, because in a lot of ways, they don't understand what a testimony is, and it's like, well, I've just grown up in the church my whole life and followed God.
That's a testimony.
That's the best testimony you can have, what testimony do you, I asked them, what testimony would you want for your kids? Homeless alcoholic? Yeah. Or growing up in the church their whole life knowing the love of God? Yeah. Everybody has the same answer, and I haven't come by anyone who hasn't had that answer, but if I did, I'd be pretty worried, Yeah. But, yeah, and there are people who need to hear that testimony, too. There's probably someone, a young kid in the church, do I have to get addicted to something to become a cool Christian who holds power? Yeah. No, and then someone can walk up, I've had my struggles, but my struggles are different. I haven't had some massive battle with addiction, some lost in my life, but I've experienced the faithfulness of God from a young age. And those are powerful testimonies that don't have different experiences or past sin kind of affecting even our present outlook on life and on the gospel and stuff like that. That's an amazing testimony to have. And people need to hear that just as much as they need to hear, I was freed from crack cocaine, and I was freed from punching grandmas and all this crazy stuff,
Yeah, I think some of it stems from also just comparing yourself to others, especially when you hear someone whose testimony is, I don't know, they were saved from a burning house by God, or they were just rescued from these deep addictions. It doesn't matter what someone else's testimony is. We're all individual. God loves you, and He's shown that to you in some way. So don't let yourself get tripped up comparing yourself to others.
Yeah. It's so true. Comparison is the thief of joy. That's an old saying, and it's so true. I remember I had a student in youth ministry one time, and we had it just kind of, I think it was 20 or 30 minutes just of soaking. Listen to the Spirit. And, at the end, well, did you guys hear anything? And one student stood up and he said, I heard the Spirit tell me that I don't need to try to be anybody else, that I can be completely satisfied with who God has made me to be.
Yeah.
And I should try to be who God made me to be instead of somebody else.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of amazing things shared that night. But that I knew was the Spirit, dude.
Yeah.
I knew it. It was so powerful, and we so often look at others. I want to be funny like them. I want to be attractive like them. I want to have a job like them. I want to be cool like them. I want to talk to people like they talk to people, and it's just dangerous.
Yeah.
And it brings sorrows to me because I used to be in that place a lot. And there's just this realization that needs to come about of I'm gonna be who God made me to be, and that's more beautiful, more powerful than anything else. And I promise you, you'll be more satisfied being who God made you to be than trying to be who God made your friend to be.
Yeah, I think that ties into Proverbs 3:5-6 quite a bit, and that says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. I think so often in our lives, we can get caught up in seeing what the world calls success or what we would call success in other people's lives, and we try to copy that and run with what they have for their life and try to take it and adopt it as our own versus sitting down with God, letting Him show us who we are. We shouldn't be basing our identity off of what someone else has accomplished, off of what someone else says they are or who they act and how they present themselves. We should get our identity from who God shows us we are and who He says we are. We are a son or a daughter of God who was made in His image and have a relationship with Him. We should be walking through life with Him and letting Him show us the plans and purposes that He has for us.
Yeah, and that's and the thing is, everything you just said, you could stop right there.
Yeah.
Because people talk about finding their identity in God and their purpose in God, and then they think it's, well, am I a worship leader, a youth pastor, a missionary, a head pastor, or all these different roles, or something like that. And those are fruits of just walking in your true identity.
Yeah.
Which is just, like you simply put, a son or daughter of God. Period. That's it. Paul refers to us as sons of God, as children of God, and that's who we are. I'm not a missionary.
Yeah.
I've done missions.
Yeah.
I'm not a youth pastor. I do youth ministry. I'm a child of God.
Yeah.
Who is involved in youth ministry and who is involved in missions and all these things, but all those things are fruits of me knowing my identity as a son of God. And if they're not, then you'll run dry.
Yeah.
It'll tear you down. Honestly, because it's who you think you are, and so if you're not performing perfectly, then I'm not doing my thing right. I'm failing and I'm not doing well, and then you just start critiquing yourself. But if you come from the attitude of I'm a son of God, well, you're forgiven, you're viewed as perfect, then you allow yourself to have grace towards yourself, just as God has grace towards you.
Yeah, I think, I don't know the verse location off the top of my head, but it roughly goes that seek first God and his kingdom, and he will add everything unto you. We do not have to try to build these roles out in our lives ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes, we can position ourselves with God to be better equipped for that or for what he has for us. But when we seek our relationship with him and we seek what he has for us, understanding that we're not always going to get everything. We're not always going to understand why he's doing or what he's doing for whatever reason. And we learn to trust in him and trust that he knows better than us, that his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And we choose to surrender to him and follow him. We're never going to know a deeper joy or peace because he's in control. He's leading us, and he's walking hand in hand with us through this life. It's not like he's some grumpy guy in the sky who says, you're going to do this, you're going to do it this way. He wants a one-on-one, personal, and intimate relationship with you, and he'll show you who he made you to be along the way.
Yeah, and I like what you started out with, talking about you don't have to worry about your future.
Yeah.
Because that was Proverbs 3 that you just read from, or?
Yeah, Proverbs 3, 5-6.
Yeah. Later, I think it's within the first 10 verses it talks about, follow him and he'll guide your path, and he'll, what it says is he'll make your barrels like plentiful and your barns full, which within our culture it's like, oh, okay. But in the time, what that was resources.
Yeah.
So, really the narrative of that is follow God, allow him to guide you in life, and he'll provide you with resources that you need.
Yeah.
So, within where we live, in our lives, in our culture, then that's a house, a car, and money. And he'll take care of us. And it's a beautiful life because we just get to follow our loving Father and obey him and just follow the guidance of the Spirit, and he'll make all things right for us.
Yeah. If he calls us to something, he's not going to ill-equip us. Yeah. The Bible says even earthly fathers who aren't perfect, who aren't good, who are sinners, will not give their child a stone if they ask for bread. Yeah. How much more will God do for us? Yeah. And when he gives us a calling or something to fulfill in our lives, he's going to provide us what we need along the way. The problem where we're going to trip up is if we try to fulfill that out of the flesh. And I've done that many times. One of the big areas of that is trusting in our timing and rushing things versus his timing.
Yeah. Jesus, he says, like you just said, he says if a child asks his father for loaf of bread, his dad's not going to give him a stone.
Yeah.
If he asks for a fish, he's not going to get a serpent.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. God wants to give us what is good for us. And as long as we're coming from a place with a genuine heart, and desire to glorify God, then he's incredibly gracious and generous with what he provides for us. I mean, I've seen the Lord's faithfulness in my life time and time again with all different things, with cars, amazing deals on cars, even finances. I've just had random people, hey, we want to donate to your ministry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not, or I want to donate to your mission trip. Well, I'm not actually going on a mission trip. Oh, what are you doing? I'm just kind of volunteering at church. Oh, awesome. Here's this check.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Yeah. The Lord is incredibly generous, and something I'll say real quick is, he's provided cars, he's provided money, but more than anything, he's provided friends. Kind of to tie this, back into where we started. The Lord has provided amazing friends in my life when I really needed them. So when I, had those bad influences and pushed them to the outer social circle, the Lord really appointed people to come into my inner circle, surround me, and influence me in such a positive way. And He is good and faithful. And if I need a friend, spouse and a friend.
Yeah. I think a lot of what religion or people understand of it, or of the church, or of God, just in general in the world, is that he's some angry guy up in the sky who's got a bunch of rules that you need to follow or you're going to go to hell and you're going to burn, and he hates us, and all these wrong ideas. And there's reasons these people have these ideas. We've misrepresented him and all of that, but we're here to tell you that God is not some angry, grumpy old guy in the sky. Yeah. He's a loving, caring Father who wants what's best for you, knows what's best for you, and wants to guide you there and have that relationship with you in that. And on that subject, Proverbs 3:11-12 says, "My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline, and don't be upset when he corrects you. For the Lord corrects those he loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he delights." God doesn't just have these sets of rules so that we have to obey everything he says and do it his way. It's because he knows if we choose to walk and follow our own path, we're going to hurt ourselves. Yeah. We're going to end up in just a pit of depression and darkness because we chase after things we think will fulfill us and they don't. And we're going to end up in such a bad place. And he doesn't want that for us. He has this discipline and he has these guidelines so that we can walk in a more fulfilling and purposeful life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing about the Lord's discipline, I think the world often views him as an angry old white man in the sky punishing his children. And I think, unfortunately, the reason why they kind of fall into that trap or believe that is, honestly, a lot of the church believes that too, unfortunately. Yeah. Which is so sad. It really breaks my heart to see that. And the thing about the Lord's discipline is, specifically in that verse you just read, spare the rod. I've heard that justified for hitting or spanking your children. Yeah. Which is sad. I was spanked as a child. No, I'm not mad about it. It was probably good for me. I needed it sometimes. But don't use that to justify it, because that verse it's a shepherding term. Yeah. So it was the rod. So what they were doing with the sheep is they weren't hitting the sheep. Sheep are pretty soft animals. You'll kill them if you do that. Yeah. You hit them in the head and they're dead, dude. They're falling, they're tumbling down. They can't even swim. They don't even realize stuff. But what you're doing is you're redirecting them. Yeah. You're hurting them. Yeah. You're shepherding them. And that's how God disciplines us as well. Yeah. He's not going to spank me. He's not going to hit me, although I'm sure it's tempting for him sometimes. I make a lot of mistakes, dude. But he redirects me. Yeah. So God's discipline is him knowing that we're going in the wrong direction. We're going to go into this lake and we're going to drown. And so what he's going to do is he's going to grab the rod and he's going to redirect me around to guide me towards himself again. Yeah. And that's what God's discipline is. It's always redirecting. It's not a punishment. Yeah. It's as we think of it, it's not go sit in the corner. It's there's something better for you. You're going down a path that's going to hurt you.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, when the discipline comes, we're trying to avoid it because we want that temporary fulfillment or pleasure that thing is going to offer. And I won't sit here and say that sin or other things won't give you that temporary pleasure. It will. Oh, yeah. But if you continue down that path, it's only going to leave you in a more empty space. And God knows that. He knows that these things that we're so often desiring to chase after, or these worldly things that we just want to throw ourselves at, they're going to leave us empty and in a place that he doesn't want us to be, and we wouldn't want if we knew what it was going to lead to in the first place. And the reason these things will leave us empty, will leave us in a dark place, is because we're trying to put things that we were not made for in the place of God in our hearts and in our souls and in our lives.
Yeah. We have all experienced that. Trying to fill the void. I always describe it as kind of like a missing puzzle piece. Yeah. And so it's like our souls are like a puzzle, and it's mostly complete, but there's one missing space. and it's in the shape of a cross. That's the last puzzle piece, and we try to fit different things in it. And the thing is, we can put things in there. Yeah. I can fit things in there, and it's like, oh, whew, I found it. Mm-hmm. I found it through this other person. Yeah. I found it through this substance. I even found it through maybe this lifestyle, this career, even. Myself, even. Mm-hmm. But it fits in there, but eventually you're going to realize it's not filling all the space. It fades away. It's not filling all the space. It's not tight in there. It's going to fall out, you know? And so Jesus is legitimately the only thing that can satisfy us and bring us that honestly, bring us to completion, make us whole again. You know, that's how the Bible describes salvation, as wholeness. And it's beautiful, man, because you can follow Christ and become whole. You know, I think, especially before Christ, you have that feeling of, I had that feeling of, I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I'm a broken individual, and I'm a piece of crap. And now, you know, after knowing Jesus and encountering Jesus and experiencing Jesus in my life, I'm whole. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect in all areas of life, but what it means is I'm whole and I'm being made whole. Yeah. You know, and in the spiritual realm, in God's eyes, I am perfect, I'm whole, I am the righteousness of God. Yeah. That's how he describes the church, the righteousness of God. My actions are still catching up to that. Yeah. You know, the way I live my life is still catching up to that. And I think we need to remember that, because then when we view those who don't know Christ, we can have a lot more compassion and sympathy towards those individuals. That I was in the same place. Yeah. And in the same way God was chasing me down, God's chasing them down and trying to redirect them, you know, turn them around, help them change their mind to go towards himself is beautiful. And I can't remember one time in my life, looking back after knowing God, where he wasn't right behind me, where he wasn't chasing me down, where the Spirit wasn't guiding me to Christ for Christ to reveal the Father. Yeah. You know, and I believe that's true for everyone. Mm-hmm. That the Spirit is working all things together, and he's guiding everyone towards himself.
Yeah. Well, you start to look back at your life, and you just notice these things that are God's little kisses from heaven, I've heard it said before, where he's trying to reveal himself to you in a deeper way in your life. And you just touched on something I think is very important to know as well, that God is trying to chase down those other people who don't know him. And I think it can become very easy for us as Christians or believers, especially if we've been walking with him for a while, that we can become sheltered in our own life and have almost a disgust towards the people of the world or people who don't know him. And it's important for us to remember that we were in that place before. We were filling our lives with things that we weren't made for. We were filling our lives with filthy things, whatever you want to call them. But we were in that spot before too. And we need to have compassion, like you said, for those people, for the lost, for the needy, for the hungry, for the starving, for everyone who's not in our own Christian community. And we need to chase after them just like God does, and showing them his love. And Proverbs 3:27-28 says, "Don't withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to help them. If you can help your neighbor now, don't say, 'Come back tomorrow and then I'll help you.'" I think it's so easy to get caught up in our sheltered life, and I've definitely done it before too, that we look over the hurt of the world around us and the people who are desperately in need of God, in need of love, in need of just attention. And we are called to be that answer to prayers they may not even know they're praying.
I think as followers of Christ, we really need to ask ourselves, is my heart breaking for the lost, for those who do not know the love that I know, for those who have not seen light like I've seen light? And I have a big heart for the lost and for evangelism. And like you're saying, we get caught up in our own circle. And then we view the world as our enemy, unfortunately. Yeah. And the world is our missions field.
Yeah.
Dude, we're supposed to go out there and be light to those people. We're supposed to go out there and be love to those people. You know, not just condemn them and shame them.
Yeah.
What Jesus did with the sinners was he would kneel down with them.
Mm-hmm.
He would talk to them when it was not socially acceptable to talk to them.
Yeah.
He would allow himself to literally be surrounded by them. He had prostitutes around him.
Mm-hmm.
He had sinners around him. He had adulterers around him.
Mm.
He had all these people who, fortunately, the followers of God, the religious people, neglected and viewed them as inferior people because of their sin. But what we're called to do as those who try to represent Jesus to the world is do what Jesus did, which was kneel down with them, and cry with them, and tell them that there's a new life for them and that there's a better way to life.
Yeah,
you know, and that's when you look at the example Jesus set. That's what he did with the people who the religious system described as the sinners. You know, he showed them nothing but love, compassion, understanding, even, and he said there's a new life for you, there's a better way for you, I have more for you. And I think a lot of times with evangelism, that's not how we really engage people. It's, you going to hell? You going to heaven or hell? You know, all these kind of things where it's like, Jesus didn't evangelize that. We don't really see the apostles even evangelize that like that. You know, it's there's a better way. There's new life for you. There's perfect love, peace, joy. You have an invitation to follow the way. To follow the light, to follow love.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that ties back into just some foundational stuff. But before I get into that, I do want to give a chance for anyone out there who doesn't know God, who doesn't know his love, who feels like they're abandoned by this world, abandoned by Christians who are self-righteous, whatever your case is. I want you to know that you are loved. You are a son or daughter of God. Even if you do not know him yet, you are made to be a son or daughter of God, and you are one, and you can walk in that relationship with him. All of us, even Christians, everyone has sinned, and what that means is we've just walked away from God's path for us. We've turned our back on him and broken his law. And Jesus came down to earth. He died on the cross to pay the price for us, but not just to pay the price for our sin, but because he loves you and he wants you. And we can have that relationship with him. We can walk hand in hand with him. All you have to do is turn to him, put your faith in him, and just trust in him. He did the work. He paid the price. He made the way, and he wants to walk through life with you. So turn to him and give him a little chance, and he'll take it a long way, and you will never be the same, and you'll never want to look back.
So true.
And what I think that was tying into is just having these good friends in our lives who are going to call us higher, who are going to call us out of our self-righteousness, out of pride, and into humility when we step into those things is so important. And I think it also just ties back into, if we're going to be a light to the world, we need to not just surround ourselves with each other, but surround ourselves with the light and spend time with God in the Bible and in prayer, and let those be a foundational part of our lives every single day.